Hey Delphi, I just heard about your comic Somulus turning 14 this year on its anniversary, May 16th. That's really cool.
Thank you. And hey, isn't your comic Ghost Junk Sickness turning 10 this year on its anniversary, June 7th?
It is.
Oh, snap. I just realized that the planet is June 7th too. That's awesome. Well, happy anniversary to you. And I hope everyone goes to check it out at ghostjunksickness.com.
And happy anniversary to Somulus as well. Go check that out at somulus.com.
All right. Hello, and welcome to Screen Tones, where we talk anything and everything webcomics. Today, we're going to be talking about banner ads. I'm Delphina. I use she, her pronouns, and I make the webcomic Zombulus.
And I'm Thane. I use she, they pronouns, and I make the webcomics Geralt and Witchwood.
Yeah, okay, so we're doing a little jam today. And banner ads. We all know what banner ads are. We've seen them around, and sometimes they can be a little obnoxious, but they are an option for both monetizing your own comic and cross promotion around other comic sites. So I just wanted to talk about what they look like, what they were, what they are, and what your options are, because there are a couple of things to make them a little less obnoxious and a little more helpful for you as a comic maker. Yeah, I mean, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but like Project Wonderful was kind of the first thing out there as far as like viable, like comic, a place to put your comic banner. Is that right to your recollection?
It wasn't the first necessarily, because there were a lot of other, so Project Wonderful was a banner ad network that launched in 2006, and prior to that there were other advertising spaces. Like I think Google Ads might have already been around, and there
Mm-hmm.
were a few other like privately run advertising networks that were mostly used by like corporations and stuff. And a lot of webcomic artists in the early 2000s would use those networks, and they would have banner listings on their pages, and some of them could make like a ton of money. Like you'd get like those early web comics could make like hundreds of dollars a day on advertising, because these, like the really lucrative corporate networks, had not really figured out like what kinds of websites were out there displaying their ads. And there was this big, I can't remember if it happened before or after Project Wonderful came around, but there was this big crash in the advertising, the web comic advertising banner use specifically, because right around the same time all the other networks started realizing that these web comics were hosting their ads but were not really displaying them to people who were going to buy their product, and they started restricting their ads and preventing webcomics from being on it, usually by introducing rules like that the page that the ad was hosted on could not have a lot of other images dominant. Like they mostly wanted to be presented on like news websites like ABC or whatever.
Yeah, the normal type people websites
Yeah,
instead of all the nerds.
they wanted to be displayed to people who like wanted to buy a car or a fancy razor or whatever, and like these like comic nerds were looking at their ads and just being like lol and not paying attention because they were looking at these big graphics. So the first way they found, well, maybe not the first way, there were a lot of different things that they used to gradually push out more and more web comics, but the big one was like the image requirements. Like the ad had to be the biggest graphic on the page, and obviously, if you're a webcomic, this means that you're disqualified. So people started kind of looking around for other options. And Ryan North, who is a webcomic creator, he did Dinosaur Comics. He's doing a lot of things now. He launched Project Wonderful as kind of a way to like bring together the webcomic community and give people like another option. And it was pretty much tailored like expressly towards webcomics specifically, and almost all the users of that network were webcomics. And basically people could apply to host a banner, and they could also apply to publish a banner on someone else's website wherever it was hosted. And it became this very like it felt pretty like community driven, because you'd see all these comics like advertising on one another back in the day, and the
Yeah.
ads were usually not too expensive, except for like the really, really high profile comics that got millions of hits a day.
Yeah, you could just spend like a couple dollars or a couple cents or something and like be on a like reasonably mid-tier like other webcomic site. And so it was like totally viable to say, okay, well, I'm gonna throw $10 out there. I'm gonna go ahead and put my webcomic out there, and you would be on another comics page. You would know that you were advertising to comic readers. And I mean, that's kind of where you want to be in terms of, you know, advertising, if instead of just throwing yourself out to, just random people who don't read comics.
Yeah, yeah. Like where am I going to find people who are going to be fans of my own work? Like if I'm going to put a banner ad anywhere, it would be on another comic that has a similar target demographic as mine, like shares genre or shares like some cool themes or tropes, or in a pinch is just extremely popular and has so many hits that surely out of the millions of people who are looking at it, like a few of them are gonna like dig my stuff. And some of these comics, like people would have like strategies, like building campaigns, which was something pretty cool that Project Wonderful would let you do, where you could kind of set like filter parameters, and you could be like, I'm gonna pick all the comics that are like fantasy genre. I It's getting hard to remember because Project Wonderful has been closed for several years, but I think they had like a tag methodology. Like
Yeah.
I could filter for tags like elves and stuff like that and advertise on all comics that had that. And I could set a cap. So it's like I don't want to spend more than like $5 a day, and just like share my stuff on like wherever it's available. And some comics literally had like banner listings that cost like $0 or were like a penny a day. So you could potentially get like a lot of hits that way by doing these campaigns.
Yeah, it was super nice. I think all of us were just kind of sad when they shut their doors, cuz like it was very useful. The stats, like you could get like so much like nitty-gritty into like how many people clicked your ad, like how much it cost per click, and start to really plan a campaign and a strategy around that. And they did eventually close their doors, which was a little sad. But then Comic Ad came up. Their URL is comicad.net, I believe. And you could go there, and it doesn't have quite as many features. I think Project Wonderful was a little more robust, but you could still go and search for different webcomic sites. It very much was, or is, because it still exists. Let's hope so by the time this episode goes live, because who knows. But
Don't
um,
jinx it.
I'm not gonna jinx it. I'm sorry. But yeah, so I'm using Comic Ad right now. And I put a couple little banners. I got to choose like where the banners go on my site. So I decided I wanted to have two small horizontal banners under like the navigation where you look at the page, and then one kind of rectangular button that is in my footer. And so you just go to comicad.net, you make your little account, you pick which sizes that you want to go on your website. And then they spit out a little code for you. You do have to have at least enough coding knowledge to like put that code in your site or your WordPress theme or whatever.
Well, the important thing isn't even necessarily like coding knowledge, because that's important, but you have to have the ability to edit that.
Yes, yes. That was, my next point. You also have to like be hosting your own site. So unfortunately, Comic Ad is not an option for Webtoon or Tapas or some of the other kinds of sites where you can't really get into the back end of your code. But if you can, it's fine. And you can set up as many or as few ads as you're comfortable with, which I really like, because I don't want my comic to be overtaken by ads. I don't think anybody wants that. But yeah, then you set up like your genres and what people are going to search for, and they find it and they place bids. You can say, I only want like a minimum amount, like of 6 cents on this thing. You have to pay at least 6 cents to be in this um, in this position. So that's kind of nice if you want to kind of cull some of the people who are just throwing out a million different ads and they don't really care what genre they're going for. They're just kind of taking the spray approach. But yeah, seems to be working out for me. I like the fact that you can also, I have it set to where every single ad that comes across my desk, I have to personally approve. So I get an email every time somebody wants one of my ad spaces, and I go into my comic ad account and I say yes or no. And so sometimes I say no if it's like, oh, that doesn't really fit with my tone or whatever. But if you don't want to deal with that because it is kind of a hassle, you can just say auto approved everything, and whoever bids in that space can take it too. So that's a little load off. But
Yeah,
um,
mine is set to auto approve, and
yeah.
I have no bottom limit. It's like 0. So the ads do usually actually make at least 1 cent a day, just because people will bid against each other. Like it'll be at
Hmm.
0 for a while, but then if somebody else wants to go in, like they have to pay a cent to get above whoever is currently bidding at 0, and so on. And sometimes it can still go up pretty high despite having no minimum.
Yeah, I like the auction mechanic of that because then they can, just kind of build on each other and you don't have to do anything. It's like, okay, well, if you want it, you got to pay more than the next guy. And that's all automated. I don't have to control that. So yeah, it just puts the ad that is winning on your site automatically and dumps money into your little account, which you can then like pull out to your bank account or PayPal. Is there a threshold? I don't remember.
That's something I have to look into as well, because I have not yet withdrawn it. I've been the main thing that I do with the money that builds up in my comic ad is that I eventually go on a spree of bidding on other comics. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the main thing that I do with it. Just feed it back into other creators.
Yeah. It just really, I like the fact that you can kind of just bank it all there. Because sometimes like I don't set a budget for myself for ads or, going in and placing ads on other sites. But I do feel like it's a good thing to do just to kind of reach outside the people that you're already talking to on social media and just be able to like, just reach new audiences sometimes. But having that little bank of $20 there to say, well, you could pull it out, but you could also just really easily spend it right here, right now, which is I'm sure what they want. But yeah, it's kind of nice. So I think comic ad isn't exactly what Project Wonderful is, but it's close. I think there's a lot of comics that use it. And you can kind of get some traction because I feel like when it was first starting out, it was not very widespread yet. And I don't think it's quite as widespread as Project Wonderful used to be, but I think it's a solid option, honestly.
Yeah, I think it came at sort of an odd time for web comics as a field, I guess, because Project Wonderful, there was a gap of a few years in between. Like Project Wonderful went down, and during that interval, that was when we started to see the rise of these big platforms like Webtoon and Tapas kind of moving in, and like little indie like ad networks like Project Wonderful and like Comic Ad are not really on the radar of those sites at all. Like, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, like people who are on these platforms can't host their own banner ads, period. So that whole kind of little ecosystem is sort of not, they don't really relate to one another, except in that, people who are reading or creating like webtoons, presumably they also read some things off the platform and they might come across these ads in ways like that, which is, just it's different circles.
Yeah, but you do have kind of options with Webtoon, I think, where you can monetize your comic and they'll put ads somewhere on your site. Is that right?
Yes. So the ways of getting ads up on your, like, ads that you can profit off of on Webtoon or on Tapas is a little opaque. They don't make it something that is immediately accessible to somebody who's just signing up for that website. Basically, you have to have made your comic and keep it going long enough to get to a certain threshold of page views and subscribers before the platform will sort of allow you on to their ad network, which again is mostly like somewhat corporate ads. Like you'll see ads for like mobile games and stuff like that on like Webtoon and Tapas, and not really so much ads from other comics, which in part, like that functionality of like cross promo and discoverability is something that at least the platforms do kind of try to fill in on their own side, like by having those like the sidebars where other comics on the platform will be linked. It's just very much out of the user's hands what gets displayed on their page. Like your comic will appear, and whatever Webtoon or Tapas has decided to put in the sidebar today is what's there, and you don't have a say in that. So it's depending on how much that kind of matters to you as a creator can be a factor in where you choose to host it. Um, like I'm on the ad network on both Webtoon and on Tapas, and it's kind of nice in terms of how absolutely hands off it is, and knowing that my comic will be displayed in so many different parts of their websites without me needing to like be there kind of managing it. There's a positive side to it, which is that it's less work for me. But if I wanted to like, you know, promote like someone else's work on mine, I don't have as many options for it, which is a little unfortunate.
Yeah. I mean, you always do have the option as like a community if you can come together with your friends or whatever to do like a cross promotional exchange. It's not like money related, but it can be a way to like get your comic out there and get new readers too. So I feel like that's always an option that works with pretty much any place you're posting a web comic, because and yeah, especially in the webtoon or tapas ecosystem where people are subscribing to multiple comics on that platform, you can really kind of do a little like, okay, this is our collaborative episode, everybody's going to contribute a banner, or we're all going to put a banner at the end of our episode like this week. And this week is we're going to be featuring this person, and the next week we're going to be featuring the next person. And getting those personal recommendations, I think a lot of readers will really appreciate the fact that another comic is endorsing something else. I think your opinion as a comic creator matters a lot. If you say, you know what, go read this comic, I really like it. And it's good to take advantage of that, and it's good to get coordinated and organized with other creators to make those opportunities happen. So I know there's a lot of discords out there, where people might plan something like this. I think the webtoon discord might coordinate these things based on genre or whatever. I know Spider Forest Collective, for our members, we do a lot of these sorts of things at least one a year, where we talk about different people's comics and say, hey, go check them out, and here's their banner and a little sample of their art. And it's a little more organic. It's not as automated as a true banner ad network, but it is accessible, and it is a way to get your comic in front of more people.
That's true, and it is something that is still available to people who are on like Webtoon and Tapas and stuff. I participated in a collab episode on Webtoon a few years ago. I haven't really been as active in like looking for opportunities for things like that, but I think it was in like 2020. It was a back to school episode that went up in September of that year, as kind of like a wow, it's been a weird 2020 year, but like, schooling is still a thing that's happening. So all the creators who were participating did a little illustration of their characters, and it all got assembled into one long episode that each participant would all upload on the same day. So the same kind of strip of multiple comics went up on like, I think it was like 20 or 30 different comics on Webtoon, and readers could scroll through and see all the illustrations around the same theme. Or some of them were even like one-page comics. They would have little speech bubbles and stuff. And then at the very bottom of it, there would be banners, just text banners, because you can't have hyperlinks on Webtoon, but it would show like a little thumbnail and the title of the comic and the creator's name. So like if readers liked the look of any of these things, they could type it into their search and find the comics that way. And it's like, it doesn't seem as like elegant as being able to have a link because of like platform restrictions, but like on every I went and looked around at like everyone else's listing as well as my own. Each one had a bunch of comments from readers who were like, oh wow, like a whole bunch of new comics for me to read, great. So it's really nice to see that like people can still like have that discoverability and like help each other out. I think the collab episodes are a pretty cool way to do it on places like Webtoon and Tapas. Although
Yeah.
Tapas does let you have hyperlinks, which is very cool.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know because I thought like both of them didn't, but that's good to know that Tapas still does. And yeah, just kind of reaching out. I think it's just so fun to do things as a community and see what you can come up with together. And you could come up with some really cute themes like the back to school thing or whatever, but just kind of get yourself out there and get people looking at your art and reach out to new audiences. I think it's always worth the time. Every time I've tried to do it, at least, to just see what happens. Put yourself out there. So yeah, I hope this has given everybody a little food for thought about different options if you want to pursue them. I think that's a chicken salad Caesar wrap. I have been Delphina, and you can find my webcomic Zombulus at zombulus.com.
And I've been Thane. You can find my comics at chiralt.sevensmith.net and witchwoodcomic.com.
And if you want to reach out for banner ads, check us out because we both run them.
Browse around comic ad. It's a lot of fun.
It is, actually. I really love that. So, yay, banner ads.
Woohoo.